Let's take a few minutes to talk about shutter speeds and their effects and why you might choose one over another within a creative exposure. Shutter speeds are about motion. So you can use a fast shutter speed to stop motion, for example, the gentleman doing the karate kick or the woman flipping her hair. You can use a slow shutter speed, pan with your moving subject to show movement against a blurry background. Or you can hold the camera steady and let your subject move in front of the camera and show the movement of your subject and the implication of time passing that way as well. And you can trade off aperture and ISO to get higher or lower shutter speeds. Here's a perfect example. The picture on the left was taken at 1/800th of a second, relatively quick. Notice the people are all standing, or not standing still, but they're sharp. Look at the picture on the right, same position, literally a couple of seconds later, but this is a 2-second exposure. Notice that the building is still there and the building is still sharp because the camera didn't move. But the people who are going up and down the stairs barely register in the picture. And it's the only people who really show up at all are the people who are thinking about going down at the top, the people trying to make the turn in the middle, and the ones who have stopped at the bottom briefly to see what's going on at the bottom of the stairs. Here's another example of a 500th of a second on the right, and the subject is actually off the ground in mid-stride, a perfect decisive moment image. On the right, we can see that he's moving. And so we've done a 30th of a second there, and it's implying that he's actually running. Landscape photographers make extensive uses of slow shutter speeds. At a 1/4 of a second, the water becomes very smooth and silky and looks like cotton candy almost. And as you slow the shutter farther down from here, the water gets smoother and smoother. Landscape photographers frequently carry heavy neutral density filters so that they can shoot at these very slow shutter speeds in very bright light. There's 3 factors that really affect how fast of a shutter speed you need to freeze the action. Number 1 is the distance between the camera and the subject. Action that's closer to the camera is going to require a faster shutter speed to stop the motion than action that's fairly distant. 2 is the direction. Action that's moving towards you is going to seem to increase in speed a little bit. Action that's moving away from you will seem to get a little slower. And both of those are going to show less relative motion than action that's moving perpendicular to the angle of your camera. And again, the closer it is to the camera, the faster the speed you're going to need. Telephoto lenses are going to require faster shutter speeds than wide-angle lenses will. The wide angle simply doesn't show the motion quite as much. Here's the pan that we were talking about a minute ago. As she walked that horse past the camera, we panned the camera with her, taking the picture in the middle of the pan and continuing to follow the action as it walked out of the frame. These work really well at a 30th, a 15th, maybe an 8th. This was taken at a 10th of a second, and this is kind of the slowest you're really going to get away with it much. And if you want to try one of these, and I certainly encourage it, do be aware this has a really high failure rate. They tend to be blurry. You get awkward feet positions. So you need to take way more pans to get a successful one than you might of something that's a more stationary subject. They're displayed typically on the LCD screen on the back of your camera, or if you're lucky, the LCD screen on the top. Typically speeds that are displayed as a 60th or a 125 or a 250 are actually the fractions of a second. In other words, a 60th of a second is written as 60. A 250 is a 1/250th of a second. And as you get into slow speeds, 1 second, 2 seconds, 6 seconds, they get written as full seconds and you get the 2 little hash marks. Slow speeds can imply motion. where the camera is stationary. So in both of these cases, we're looking at a still camera. The one on the left is what happens when you also add a flash into that exposure as well. You get a sharp subject in the middle of a blurry moving subject that's sort of ghosted. Both of these were 1/30th of a second, which is about as slow as you can get away with holding and still be handheld. So to summarize a little bit, the speeds are displayed as numbers. 30, 60, 125 as an example is fractions of a second. And these move in full stop increments. So a 1/30th of a second to a 60th of a second is a one stop change. So is a 1/30th to a 15th. They simply divide and double. Freezing fast action is going to need a fast shutter speed. Slow shutter speeds are going to reveal motion, especially if you've got a stationary camera. Panning with the action requires moving the camera with the action, and you really need an appropriate background so that you can see that motion. And then the three things affecting the shutter speeds necessary to freeze the action: distance, direction, and lens choice. So the assignment is to photograph a fast-moving subject to show how fast a shutter speed freezes fast-moving action and how a slow shutter speed reveals that motion with a stationary camera. Definitely check into Canvas to get the complete assignment details. Good luck and have fun with this one.